Hello, everyone. Vice President J.D. Vance here. Welcome back to the Charlie Kirk Show. So I am moonlighting as a radio host today, of course, in honor of my dear friend Charlie. And, I wanted to be like Marco Rubio. I wanted to add an extra job here as the radio host and vice president here in the West Wing, here in the White House complex. But I have another person here who wears many hats and is one of the most gifted communicators I've ever seen, right up there with the great Charlie Kirk. I'm glad to be joined by Karoline Leavitt, our press secretary. Karoline, so good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Very kind. I appreciate your saying that.
So why don't you kick it off and tell us a little bit? So those who don't know, who are listening or watching, you actually were involved with TPUSA very early on when you were in college. Tell me about that experience and about getting to know Charlie Kirk through that forum.
Sure. Well, I'm a Gen Z conservative, so I was really raised within the MAGA movement, and within the MAGA movement as a Gen Z conservative means you're very much a part of the Turning Point USA movement. And so my political education was not just through the rise of President Trump, but also the rise of Charlie Kirk.
Yep.
And watching him and listening to him. And I inquired about starting a Turning Point USA chapter on my college, St. Anselm College in Manchester, New Hampshire, where I went and where my political ambition and love of media and politics really began. And so just by watching Charlie from a distance was so inspiring to me as a young conservative woman. And then I got to know him personally when I decided to run for Congress, and he was a tremendous supporter and friend.
Right. So you literally communicate for a living. You're the person that speaks to the American people and the world on behalf of the White House every single day. Did you learn anything particular about the way that Charlie Kirk communicated with people? And what I always appreciated is that though he was very smart, and though you see all these clips of him owning people or of him getting the better of somebody in a debate, if you watched a full Charlie Kirk rally and all of the Q&A, and I was just talking with Andrew about this off camera, 90% of it is Charlie being kind and being compassionate and offering moral support to people. What do you take from Charlie Kirk, the communicator?
So many things just by watching him and by being around him. But I think most of all, standing firm in your convictions and picking a fight, especially when you know you have the facts and the truth on your side, but doing it with a smile. And that's something Charlie did so brilliantly and well. He would go to these campus reform events and he would say to the crowd, if you disagree with me, come to the front of the line. And I find myself doing that in the briefing room, picking on the reporters whom I know very much disagree with me and with the president. But as long as you believe in what you're saying and you have conviction in it and you have truth and the facts on your side, it makes it a lot easier to say it. And that's what Charlie did for a living. And I know he inspired me as a young voice for President Trump now, like you said, behind the White House podium. And, before every briefing, I always pray to Jesus Christ. And Charlie was so outspoken with his faith, and I will continue to be in honor of him. But I'll also think of Charlie and just how brilliantly he was able to combat the lies with facts and to do it with a smile.
Absolutely. So, I always think of Charlie Kirk debating sometimes these kids on college campuses and how the one part of your job that maybe would be harder if you went on college campuses is I think some of these college kids ask way better questions than the radicals do in the White House press briefing room. So that'd be like good preparation for you in a lot of ways. Yeah, exactly. TPUSA was actually the varsity. Right. Now you're kind of the JV level with your opponents here, but you do such an incredible job. And you were, of course, not just the White House press secretary, you were also the main spokesperson during the Trump campaign. And I want to ask how important Charlie was to the victory, because there were so many events that we did with TPUSA where I would show up and they were incredible and the energy was off the charts. And Charlie would always tell me whenever I went to Arizona, he'd say, don't worry about Arizona, worry about Michigan, worry about Wisconsin. We've got Arizona. Talk with a minute and 10 seconds remaining just about how important Charlie was to our effort to win and make Donald Trump into president of the United States.
The president has said it himself. The president's massive gains with young Americans across the country was in no small part because of the efforts of Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA. And our team on the campaign was constantly checking in with him and keeping him apprised of what the president was doing and saying, because we needed his voice to relay that to his audience, which is made up of young people across the country. And the president spoke at many turning point events. He went into that lion's den at the invitation of Charlie to get his message across. And Charlie was incredibly supportive of the non-traditional new media strategy that the president took. And, you know, the president loved Charlie deeply. You know that, Mr. Vice President, and I know that. And I know he deeply is hurt by this loss because Charlie played an instrumental role in returning the president to the Oval Office. And I just love that clip from election night when Charlie realized President Trump had won. And he was speechless for one of the few times in his life. There were no words, just tears.
I'll be damned.